Cells lecture. Here are the objectives for the cells chapter. We're identifying the main components of the cell and the functions of each of these components. Cells have various different shapes and sizes, so the human cells can vary. The ovum is 150 micrometers and the red blood cell is 7.5 micrometers. So there's vast variables in size as far as the human cells. They are all microscopic. Cells differ in their shape. They can be circular or spherical, flat, thread-like, or irregular in shape. Just depends on what their function is. Cell composition. Cells contain cytoplasm, a substance found only in cells. It differs from interstitial fluid, which is the tissue fluid that bathes every cell in the body. Organelles are specialized structures within the cytoplasm. The cell interior is surrounded by a plasma membrane, which encloses all of the cytoplasm of the cell. Cell parts. The cell membrane forms an outer boundary of the cell. It is composed of a thin two-layered membrane of phospholipids containing proteins, and it is selectively permeable. Cholesterol is oftentimes a fat molecule that is a component of the plasma membrane. It helps stabilize the phospholipid molecules to prevent breakage in the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane lets certain substances through and serves as a communication device. So this is a picture of the plasma membrane. And as you can see, there are proteins that let different particles through the layers. Cytoplasm is the internal living material of cells. It fills spaces between the plasma membrane and the nucleus. It contains organelles and numerous smaller structures. Here's a picture of the cell structure with all of its components. The most important, I would say, are the nucleus and the plasma membrane. We also consider the mitochondria very important, as it is the powerhouse of the cell. However, all of the organelles have a function and are all of importance in some way, shape, or form. Ribosomes may attach to the rough endoplasmic reticulum or lie free in the cytoplasm. They are made up of two tiny subunits of mostly ribosomal RNA. They manufacture enzymes and other protein compounds. They are often called the protein factory. Endoplasmic reticulum is the network of connecting sacs and canals, carry substances through fluid cytoplasm. There are two types. There's rough and there's smooth. The rough collects, folds, and transports proteins made by ribosomes, and smooth endoreticulum synthesizes chemicals and makes new membranes. The Golgi apparatus is a group of flattened sacs near the nucleus. They collect chemicals into vesicles that move from the smooth endoplasmic reticulum outward to plasma membranes. They are called the chemical processing and packaging center, which is the continuous folding of proteins and combinations to form glycoproteins. Oftentimes, here's a picture of the Golgi apparatus, and oftentimes the little vesicles here that you will see are little sacs that are fused, sometimes they're fused with the Golgi apparatus, such as here, and then they are released, and they allow the contents to mingle and deliver to the endoplasmic reticulum. So as you can see, the vesicles here then will move to the endoplasmic reticulum here and transport those materials. The mitochondria is composed of inner and outer membranous sacs. They involve the energy-releasing chemical reactions and contain one DNA molecule. They are the power plant of the cell. They give the cell energy. Lysosomes are membranous wall organelles that contain digestive enzymes. They have protective functions, so they eat microbes. And they formally are thought to be responsible for programmed cell death or apoptosis. Centrosomes are centrioles that are found in the centrosome are paired with organelles that lie at right angles to each other and are near the nucleus. They help in the function of cell reproduction. Microvilli and cilia are cell extensions. Microvilli are small finger-like extensions of the plasma membrane and increase absorptive subsurface area of the cell. Cilia are fine hair-like extensions found on free or exposed surfaces of some cells. They are capable of moving in unison in a wave-like fashion. Here's a picture of cilia, which is most commonly in the respiratory tract that helps move mucus upward, and microvilli. We also have flagellum pictured here, which the only flagella in the human body is the sperm. Flagella are a single projection-like extending from the cell surface. They are much larger than cilia. They are, so to speak, tails of sperm cells. And here is a picture of the movement pattern. Cilia are like an oar-like pattern that push fluid and particles and make them move. Flagellum are a wave-like movement that propels forward. Sometimes you can think of it as a whip-like motion. The nucleus is surrounded by the nuclear envelope, which is made up of two separate membranes that contain a nuclear pore, which permits large molecules to move into and out of the nucleus. The nucleolus is a dense region in the nuclear material. The nucleus contains chromatin and chromosomes. Controls cell because it contains the DNA or the genetic code, and gives instructions for making proteins, which in turn determines the cell structure and the cell function. Component structures include nuclear envelope, nucleoplasm, nucleolus, and chromatin granules. DNA molecules become tightly coiled chromosomes during cell division. Each cell has 46 chromosomes in the nucleus. Relationship of cell structure and function. Every human cell has a designated function. Some help maintain the cell, others help regulate life processes. Specialized functions of the cell differ depending on the number and the type of organelles. There are two types of transport processes for moving substances into and out of the cell: diffusion and filtration. Diffusion is passive transport process, and filtration is the movement of water and solutes through a membrane because of greater pushing force on one side of the membrane. Passive transport processes do not require added energy. They result in the movement of down or considered down in concentration gradient. Diffusion, substances scatter themselves evenly throughout the available space. It is unnecessary to add energy to the system, and movement is from high to low concentration. Some examples are osmosis and dialysis. So here is a picture of diffusion. And as you can see, solutes are substances dissolved in water. So as you can see, here is the start where we have uneven particles within the water. And over time, they equal out. And there's no pressure or energy required over time in order for this to happen. This is considered diffusion. Osmosis and dialysis are specialized examples of diffusion across a selectively permeable membrane. Osmosis is diffusion of water when some solutes cannot cross the membrane. Dialysis is diffusion of the solutes. So here is an example of osmosis. Albumin cannot pass the barrier, but the H2O can. So as you can see at the start, there's a higher concentration of albumin over here versus on the left. And then as time passes, what happens is the water moves itself to make the diffusion even, causing it to be equal. Filtration is the movement of water in solutes caused by hydrostatic pressure on one side of the membrane and is responsible for urine formation. Active transport processes occur only in living cells. Movement of substances is up the concentration gradient and usually requires energy from adenosine triphosphate or ATP. ATP is a substance produced by the mitochondria using energy from nutrients. It is capable of releasing energy to do work for the cell. During active transport, ATP breaks down and releases the energy. Ion pumps. An ion pump is a protein complex in the cell membrane. An ion pump uses energy from ATP to move substances across the cell membranes against their concentration gradient. Examples are the Sodium-potassium pump and the calcium pump. Some work with other carriers, such as glucose or amino acids, and they are transported along with ions. So in order for glucose to cross the cell membrane, insulin needs to be present on the cell membrane as the transporter. So here's an example of the sodium-potassium balance. So for every 3 sodium in the cell, there are 2 potassium excreted outside the cell. And then when there are 3 sodium outside the cell, there are 2 potassium being brought into the cell. ATP is broken down in the process so that the energy freed from the ATP can be used to pump the ions. Phagocytosis and pinocytosis. Both are active transport mechanisms because they require cell energy. Phagocytosis is a protective mechanism often used to destroy bacteria. Pinocytosis is used to incorporate fluids and dissolve substances in cells. And here you see phagocytosis, the process, and the active transport methods of particles. Cell transport and disease. Cystic fibrosis is characterized by abnormally thick secretions in the airways and digestive ducts and is a result from failed chlorine transport into cells. Cholera is a bacterial infection that causes chlorine and water to leak from cell linings in the intestines, resulting in severe diarrhea and water loss. And the next photo is 2 girls that are of the same age, one with cystic fibrosis, which would be the smaller one. When there is a lack of chlorine transport, there are growth problems along with this disease, which makes a child of the same age a lot smaller than they normally should be. The life expectancy of patients with cystic fibrosis are usually early to mid-20s at most. Some do live longer, but those are rare instances.